Hi everyone, today I'm making risotto, which is that great Italian dish that's that nice creamy rice. It's served at a lot of restaurants, and once you get the basic recipe down, you can sort of use that as a blank canvas to create all sorts of interesting risotto dishes. Actually today I'm going to be making a wild mushroom risotto. So I have here some wild mushrooms that I got from Whole Foods. We have some chanterelles here and some tree oyster mushrooms and your basic baby bellas. I'm also going to be scenting it with sage because I think it'll be a nice or earthy herb to use with my risotto. Now the thing with risotto is that there's three basic types of Italian rice that you can use for the risotto dish. I basically use the arborio rice, which is, you know, what's sold at almost all the grocery stores. Here's the box that I got it from. And it's just a very short grain rice. It's not very big. It's actually like little pearls. And what's nice about it is it can really give off a lot of cream that will make your risotto dish really nice and rich. Alright, in my pan, I'm going to first start by warming a tablespoon of butter. That'll make our risotto nice and creamy. But I also like to have a tablespoon of olive oil. And over medium-high heat, or let it boil a little bit, I'm going to add a clove of minced garlic. Get going. The garlic is, I think, optional. I think in Italian cooking you have to have garlic, but if you think that might be too strong for you, then you don't need to add that. But you definitely need to add onion. So I have this finely diced onion. This is just half an onion, and I'm going to add that in. So you don't want it too high a heat because you don't want to burn your onions or your garlic. What you want to do is get that translucent color, getting rid of that sharp onion taste. Now we can add our risotto rice. So here's our risotto. This is about a cup of risotto. And again, I'm using the Arborio brand, which is the most common one found in grocery stores today. And what we want to do now is sort of let it toast by cooking it dry for about a minute. And the reason why we're going to toast it is that actually helps bring out the creaminess once you start adding the broth. It's sort of waking up the risotto, waking up the rice. Once you have your rice toasted, you can add now some liquid. And I like to add, before adding the broth, I like to add some liquor. So usually white wine. Today I'm using a dry Riesling because I like to use really dry wine. It has a little more sweeter flavor, I think, after you cook it. And you put in maybe about a cup or like a small wine glass. There you go. Get that all around. Alright, so after the wine has cooked off a bit, you'll see that you can see the bottom of the pan. So you know now it's time for more liquid, and now we can add the broth. So next to my pan, I've warmed up about 2.5 cups of chicken broth, and I'm going to add maybe 2 ladles. The temperature will always be consistent. Then that'll be good. So what I like to do now is, after I've got the broth going into the rice, I like to add now sort of the flavoring. At this time I might add either saffron or some other spice, but today I'm going to go ahead and add some minced sage because I had some in the refrigerator and I think it'll go nicely with the mushroom. So I'm just going to add that in, and that'll infuse the broth even more with flavor. So you're basically just cooking the risotto, letting it absorb all the broth, and you gradually add in more broth when you start seeing it being absorbed and running out, because you don't want your your risotto to stick to your pan, on the bottom of the pan. But you can sort of see that so you see how as I stir it, I can see a little bit of the bottom of the pan. So I know it's absorbed much of the broth and it's time to add in a little bit more. So I'm going to add in another 2 ladles. And you basically just keep on doing this until your risotto is nice and creamy. So while that's happening, I'm going to start working on my mushrooms, which I'm going to add to my risotto at the end. Okay, now that we have our risotto cooking away, we're going to work on the mushrooms. And what I'm going to do before putting it in the risotto is I'm actually going to sweat the mushrooms. So I've got my hot pan, and I'm just going to get my mushrooms that I've sort of destemmed and sort of taken out, cut it into sort of manageable pieces. And now I'm just going to put it in the hot pan and sort of let some of the liquid come out by cooking it a little bit. Now you'll start to see the mushroom actually sweating. It'll start to have liquid coming out. And then once that starts to happen, then you know you're pretty much done. And then you can sort of turn off the stove and then set it aside. And then when we're ready, we'll put it in our risotto. So now it's a little more than 15 minutes and our risotto is nice and plump. You'll know that it's done when it gets that sort of almost clear look. So when it actually is done, you like to take it off the heat because you don't want it to cook any longer. It will still continue to cook, so it's better to sort of take it off the heat, but because my camera is all set, I'm going to leave it here. What I like to do is I like to season it now with some salt. Add that in. I didn't put too much because I know what I'm also going to add is Parmesan cheese, and that Parmesan also has salt in it, so we don't want it to be too salty. So this is actually your base risotto after we've done all the broth absorbing. And well, here's my Parmesan Reggiano. I love this cheese. It's really great. This added in at the very last minute is what makes your risotto even more creamier and richer. At the end, look how nice and creamy it is. And this becomes your basic risotto. And to this you can add to it. So what we're going to do is make it a wild mushroom risotto by adding the mushrooms that I shredded earlier. I'm going to throw that in. Here's all our mixed mushrooms. Looks really pretty. And then we'll just mix it up. And then that's how we get our wild mushroom risotto. Now I can plate this up. Alright, so I've plated my mushroom risotto. Doesn't that look great? And I'm just going to garnish. What I did was I left out some of the mushrooms. I didn't put all of it in because I like to have some of the mushroom on top in a nice little bunch. And because I use sage, I want to sort of add that in as well as part of the garnish. Now this is pretty much nice in itself, but my other ingredient that I'm going to add is this great thing I found recently called, I don't know if any of you have eaten it. It's very similar to prosciutto. It's Italian. You slice it really thin. Look how beautiful that looks. It's like paper, but it's like prosciutto. It's a little more leaner. And what I like to do is sort of tear it and just kind of almost like drizzling it over it. And you know, I'm just kind of throwing little ripped pieces on top, so you don't really need that much of it. And just to finish it off, I'm gonna put a little more shavings of Parmigiano. I love that. And there we go. Your basic risotto with wild mushroom and a nice little speck on top. Enjoy.